I want to welcome all of you. Thank you for joining us, of course, for another episode of the Nonprofit Show. Today is Monday, or if you joined us in the Chitty Chat, I called it Monday because I'm so excited to chat with our guest today, which is also a presenting sponsor. So you'll see Bloomerang on your screen, top left. Thank you so much for your dedication, not only to these episodes, Stephen, but to the sector at large. And of course, thank you to all of our presenting sponsors that you see in front of you. This list is growing. You might see a couple of new ones there, Fundraising Academy and Nonprofit HR. So thank you so much to expanding our audience, expanding our expertise, and again, just expanding the knowledge that we are providing to the sector. So thank you so much to our sponsors. And thank you to Julia for having this crazy dream that woke her up in the middle of the night and said, hey, Jared, I have this idea. So Julia Patrick is the CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. She swore we would only do this for 2 weeks, and here we are in our 240-something episode. So I'm really excited to serve alongside you, Julia, as your co-host. I'm Jarrett Ransom. Julia likes to refer to me as her nonprofit nerd, also your nonprofit nerd, but really the nonprofit nerd. And I'm CEO of my own firm, the Raven Group. So Monday is because we have Steve Shattuck with Bloomerang, Chief Engagement Officer. And usually he's out surfing the cornfields of his hometown. Yeah. But instead he's here. That joke referenced the first time we met with him. He literally had a surfboard right behind him in his office.
Can you see it? It's over there.
Oh, yes. Thank you for that, Stephen. And so of course, me and all my glory, I was like, is there a lot of waves where you live, Stephen? I'm not quite sure that there are.
We finally did get snow. I could probably whip it out and go sledding on it.
I'm sure you could. So Stephen, of course, as you know, is one of our presenting sponsors here with Bloomerang. He's also the author of this book that Julie is holding up, Robots Make Bad Fundraisers. Wonderful book. Julie and I have wiped him out of all of them. So go ahead and place your back order. No, it really is a great book. And today we're talking about something that is really important in our sector, Stephen. So we're glad to have you here to talk about understanding donor retention. Welcome.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for having me.
This is such a big issue. It's one of those things, it's almost mysterious. Right. It gives people a lot of fear. And I think we don't study it enough because we don't want to know, because we're afraid. And it's an awful thing. Yeah, it is. It is one of those things. It's an awful thing to say, but I kind of think that it's something that we pull back on. And so you're part of this FEP, the Fundraising Effectiveness Project.
Yeah.
So talk to us about that a little bit.
Well, February is my favorite month because it's when we release the new data on the previous year, which I just got yesterday. So I'm so excited to be talking to you. This is like the best timing. But yeah, FEP, check them out, afpfep.org. We'll get to the website, bookmark it. Almost 2 decades worth of research. I think the first donor retention study they did was back in 2006, looking at the 2005 year. So they've been going at it for a while. Really cool collaboration between AFP and the Urban Institute, and also a collaboration between typically competing database vendors. So Bloomerang, Donor Perfect, Neon. We all collaborate on this project and send them our anonymous customer data, which is tens of thousands of nonprofits. I think it's like $9 billion in transactions it's like a pretty good picture of the whole sector. And basically it just shows how well all those folks are doing at retaining their donors. Now we actually release quarterly reports, so you can kind of see on a quarterly basis how we're doing versus the pace from the previous year's quarter. But what is going to come out, I have the data, but it's not out yet, probably this week, is, okay, how did we do in 2020, which was probably the strangest fundraising year, maybe of all time, certainly in my professional career, my adult life. There are some interesting things in that report. So go to the website, bookmark it. if you download last year's report or maybe last quarter's report, I think you'll be notified when we do release the study. But average retention rate, new donor retention rate, so not just how many people who gave in 2019 came back in 2020, but did we get first-time donors to give a second gift? Mm-hmm. Did we get repeat donors to continue to give? So it drills down into individual donor types as well. And it's good to just kind of compare to your own performance and see how well you're doing compared to the sector.
So what on the average would you say, I mean, this 45%, that is been a consistent kind of area. So we should be looking at that kind of as a standard mean.
It's kind of like the 2% of GDP, right? That fundraising represents. It doesn't really change very much. You know, you may have 43 one year and 46 and 44, but basically that's where it stayed for those almost 20 years that FEP has been looking at it. And what I say to that is, it's not getting any better, right? It's not going to accidentally get better. And the organizations that really put a focus on stewardship and trying to improve their rates, they're going to stand out amongst the organizations who don't, because like you said, Julia, I think you're spot on, is it's not really a metric that I think is on the tip of people's fingers and is something that maybe they're actively trying to improve, but it should be. It's a great upstream kind of organizational health metric, because it informs certainly revenue, lifetime value of donors, so all that future revenue, and it can kind of alert you to maybe gaps in your communication process. Like if you find that, gee, our brand new donors don't give a second gift, well, why is that? Are we welcoming them well enough? Are we giving them the information that we think that they want in that first year of giving? And it can really kind of guide your efforts in sort of your communications campaigns, your fundraising strategies. It's a good kind of bellwether for what you're doing.
This is so exciting to me. And I feel like we're on a roll, Julia, because last week we had Jeb Banner on, from Boardable. And that was breaking news, shared his report on board engagement, and basically saying the health of your organization starts with your board engagement. And so now what you're sharing with us, Stephen, is also breaking news. It's not even really released yet. So it's donor retention. And I love that it's a collaboration effort in our sector. I didn't realize that we had essentially competitors in the CRM systems providing this data. And like you said, billions of dollars, billions of transactions. And so really that donor retention, when I coach my clients, and I see a couple of you on watching today, so thank you so much. I do like to ask, what is your donor retention rate? And if they don't know it, that's a great place I think we should start. I will also tell you, going back to like board engagement, I have sat in numerous board meetings and rarely board members asked what the donor retention rate is.
Right.
It's shocking. I mean, I agree with you. So let's be a little foundational here, and let's talk about how you even calculate this, Stephen.
Right. Yeah, it's simply the percentage of people who gave in the previous period, how many of them came back in the following period. And you can do it a few different ways. You can look at calendar year, you can look at anniversary year, and none of them are wrong. I think one of the things that can maybe set yourself down the wrong road is maybe thinking that donors are operating on your schedule and not theirs. So, if someone gives on February 22nd of 2021, if February 23rd of 2022 rolls around, I wouldn't necessarily be, elbowing that person and calling them a deadbeat because now they're 1 day over their year. Not necessarily lapsed, but if it gets maybe towards the end of the year of 2022, that's maybe when you might start to consider that person in danger of lapsing, if not lapsing already. And again, you can look at this for any donor type. First-time donors, okay, they gave their first gift in 2019. How many of them gave their second gift in 2020? You can look at it by channel, your online donors versus your direct mail donors, what the retention rates are there. I mean, really the sky is the limit. And you're right. I mean, there's a clear through line from the board. I love that Jeb was the guest prior to me, because this is a board metric. This is maybe one of the best ones you can have, because if the board is digging into it, it all flows down, right? If the board makes it a priority, much easier that the staff is going to get the support they need. One thing we see is, well, we want to do stewardship, but we just can't find the time. I think if the board makes it a priority versus maybe some other things that don't have the ROI that perhaps retention strategies do, like maybe, that event that we do every year that everyone hates. And I'm not an anti-event guy or anything like that, but it's interesting what gets attention and what doesn't. But if the board is really championing that, we don't see organizations that have high retention rates that it's not top of mind for the board, I guess is another way to put it.
Yeah. And I do use Bloomerang with one of my clients, and I know that on the dashboard, I don't even have to do the formula.
It's right there.
It's right there. It is on the dashboard of the donor database. Many others, hate to say this, Stephen, but other competing, donor database systems should have this on the dashboard as well. So this should be a formula that for any of you dealing with development, fundraising, that, mindset and responsibility, this should be something that you are constantly looking at. And then also like implementing some strategies to increase it. So if you do the math, or you look on your dashboard in Bloomerang and you see that you're not at that national average, 40 to 45%, we're going to talk a little bit, hint, hint, wink, wink, Stephen is going to share, right? Like, what are some donor strategies that we can really start to engage to help to increase our percentage there?
Well, there's a lot of research on this. I mean, people have been looking at donor loyalty and donor psychology. Adrian Sargent, Penelope Burke, the Donor Voice, Jen Shang, and you can look at all those, but they all basically come to the same conclusion, right? Donors want to be thanked. They want to be thanked personally. They want to be thanked quickly. They want to know what their dollars are doing out in the community. So if you carve out some time for thanking and storytelling, impact reporting, the kinds of things that you're probably putting in newsletters, or maybe you're making videos about for your end of year event or something like that, you can make those stories ever present. It'll get donors really hooked on, gee, look at all the great things that my gift is making happen through this organization. And I know, it can be problematic to go a little too far into, donor worship, that causes problems. But gee, calling a brand new donor to say, hey, Julia, thanks so much for joining the family of donors. Writing a handwritten note to a monthly donor, hey, Jared, just want to say thanks for being a monthly donor. Or, hey, Stephen, you've been giving to our organization for years and years. Just want to recognize that. Not a super heavy lift, and it doesn't go into that kind of donor worship that can be problematic as well. And tell the stories. Here's a kid who went through our program, and he's the first person in his family to go to college, and it's all because of donors like you. Those kinds of things. If you do those, it's kind of hard not to see your donor retention rates improve. And Jared, you said it yourself, it only takes an incremental increase to have a lot of extra benefit from it. 1% change in retention can be tens of thousands of dollars over the lifetime of those people giving.
And there's really 4 key elements. You want to ask, you want to think, you want to report, right? So report the impact of their dollar and repeat. So those are also strategies to engage. So I'm curious from this report, what you've seen, because as you said, this is last year. Last year was a dumpster fire of a year. So what kind of report are we looking at?
I think when people download the report, hopefully this week, a couple of things will jump out at them. It decreases across the board in retention. In other words, people who gave in 2019 did not come back in 2020. However, there was an increase, actually a really big increase, one of the biggest increases we've seen, I believe. I didn't compare all 25 or 20 reports, but jumped out at me, new donors the total amount of donors, in other words, the number of bodies who contributed dollars to these organizations, and the amount of gifts, and a lot of small dollar gifts. Really, those under $250 gifts were the sustaining factor in this funding. So a lot of small dollar donors. And again, this is something that should inform your retention strategy, because very often what I see is, oh, they only gave $25. I'm not going to spend time calling them on the stewardship. And do that at your own peril, or don't do that at your own peril. I would say most new donors do not give it capacity. You never know when that sweet old lady who's been giving you $100 a year is suddenly going to write you into their will for $2 million, right? This is a long view approach for sure. But it's the small donors that I think are going to save us, rather than these, mega gifts from a small group of super wealthy people. Thank them. $25 may be a lot of money to people, especially in a year when, and we talked about this, in a year where there was so much economic uncertainty, a lot of people are going through tough times. That may have been a major gift to that person, right? Even if it wasn't a major gift to you. So if you can kind of change that mindset, people will fall in love with you if you really highlight and thank them for that contribution, no matter how small it may seem to you, maybe big to them.
One of the things that I recommend in Robots Make Bad Fundraisers is the chapter that you spend on going through Giving Day and how you monitor what occurs, and how you choose different organizations that you don't have a relationship with, and then you track what has gone on. And it is riveting. I just think that should be a primer for anyone in fundraising, because what you write about very honestly and very authentically is with it's totally amazing what the responses are. And I say that, Stephen, kind of in a bad way.
Right. Yeah. Especially online, the retention rates for online gifts very often are lower, right? Because things are automated, they get that automatic receipt from your software, and they may not get anything else.
And that's
it. And I wonder, it didn't occur to me till now, if that was a contributing factor in 2020, because I would assume that with all of the events on hold, maybe it was harder to send direct mail. And Blackbaud said this, the Blackbaud research came out a couple of weeks ago, and there was a big jump in online. And if you kind of put all these pieces together, and you imagine the experience of those online donors, probably all they were getting is that, automatic receipt, maybe a form letter in the mail. But were they getting a phone call, or were they getting a handwritten note? Or were they just kind of bombarded by subsequent communications that weren't really tailored for who they are? It's very likely.
Yeah, it is likely. Well, I love that you said, well, I dislike that our donor retention rate has gone down, but I love that the amount of transactions, the amount of gifts have actually increased. So that's very interesting. Now, the nerd in me would love to compare this to something like, our last economic crisis. How might this compare? Now, we were in a different technological front at that time. It's very different. But and it might not be apples to apples, but I would be curious if we did go back to, 2009. What that might look like.
It seems like the nonprofit sector is really well positioned to kind of weather these economic uncertainties and these tough times. People respond in times of need, right? I mean, a lot of our customers had banner years, and I think it was basically came down to the fact that they weren't afraid to ask. Now, you can do that in a tactful way, certainly, and if people can't give because they're going through economic uncertainty or tough times, that's fine, but a lot of people aren't. And I can't log into Facebook even now, almost a year later, without seeing some kind of fundraiser for a nonprofit, for waiters and waitresses who are underemployed or out of work. People want to help, and nonprofits can be maybe the only conduit for people to feel like they can help in some ways. A lot of people are feeling powerless, and to give $20, to give $30 can be really empowering for the giver, as well as, obviously impactful for the organization on the receiving end.
It's interesting you say that, and I'm going to admit to, really just first world benefit here, but days that I don't want to cook, days that I'm exhausted, I'm guilty of Uber Eats, DoorDash, Grubhub, any of those. You can't even get on an app like that, Stephen, without seeing the opportunity to give to the service industry.
Absolutely. Yeah. And they're bold. If you're bold, if you decide for your donor, that's it. But if you give them the opportunity, at least they have the option of giving.
Right.
And I wonder, if you look at the FEP data, lower retention rates, but a lot of new gifts. I wonder how much of that was a little self-imposed, right? Maybe some people put themselves on the sidelines, but new people who saw the need, they stepped up. And I wonder if they could have had even bigger results if they had gone back to their, past donors as well to say, hey, we need some extra help right now. Would you be willing to chip in? It's interesting.
Right. Well, I think Jarrett and I have seen that. I mean, we use the Stephen Shattuck when you say, March 231,
right.
First, that things went on. But I would say to you, Stephen, and probably so many of our viewers would be able to echo this, and that is, we saw organizations that were like, we're going to hit the pause button.
Yeah.
We're not going to have the regular board meeting structure. We're going to pull back. We're going to see what's going on. And then we had other organizations that were like, hell no,
let's go.
Leaning in, and we're going to, and wow, the disparity is stunning.
Yeah, same thing. Stunning. And you talk about the board. I'm guessing that the people who kept their foot on the gas, they had the support of the board, and maybe it was, and conversely, maybe it was the board saying, I don't know if this is right now. Maybe we should hold back.
And those are the ones that had the banner year, the ones that leaned in.
Yes.
That leaned in.
I have a client that I was floored to hear this data, but in the last 2 months of last year, they raised half of their operating budget.
I believe it.
And it was just fascinating. So you're right. There have been a lot of significant, positives to last year, even though it was a dumpster fire. Now, I want to kind of flip the script, throw a curveball to you, Stephen.
Okay.
Jill has no idea even what I'm
ready.
Yeah, get ready. So I have heard from a lot of my clients that maybe have an event, for instance, a run, a hike, a golf tournament, an event. Okay. The people are coming as an attendee or as a participant, but they're not really donors, right? So that skews their donor retention because they're coming for a specific reason, but they're not really giving altruistically to the mission. So that, of course, if you count those individuals in, I'm going to call them participants as opposed to donors. How might we engage those participants into the donor equation? And I've coached on a couple of different strategies to my clients, but I'm just curious if this has come up in some of the FEP reports or what you might have seen.
Well, I think the challenge is if the event isn't tied to the mission in some way, right? If it's a golf tournament benefiting a golf, youth training program to keep kids off the street and teach them this game, I think that's going to be easier than maybe some kind of social service putting on a golf tournament, right? That's going to exacerbate the issue. So the best you can do is make sure that event has some sort of tie to your mission. Now, if it doesn't, that's okay. And if people love it, that's great. I think then the answer to your question, Jared, is can you sort of reintroduce yourself to those potential donors? Like, hey, thanks for coming. Thanks for supporting us. By the way, this is who we are, right? I think a lot of organizations are kind of, maybe they assume that the attendee already knows about them and maybe has just decided they're not going to support. But in reality, it's kind of like peer-to-peer where it's like, they may not even know what the heck you do, right? Their buddy invited them to a charity golf tournament. Okay, great. I'm in. I love to play golf and charity. Cool. What's the charity? What do they do? Maybe have that buddy who invited them say, oh no, this is a really awesome nonprofit. This is what they do. And you should keep donating to them, by the way. Very similar to peer-to-peer. Lean on maybe that person who's bringing them in the door, because there probably is someone. It's not, I don't know how many people are just wandering randomly off the street into your event, having not been invited by somebody. I guess it could happen, but
connection somehow.
There's probably some kind of soft credit opportunity with a third party. Lean on them and have them, kind of turn the screws on them. Like, hey, you need to keep donating to this. This is a good cause. It's great that you got a cheap round of golf, but they need some help. They're doing great things. Donate to them.
Right. Good point. Because I've seen that really skew the donor retention, so I've pulled donor retention rates for clients based off of all donors and then also removing those event attendees. But I've also said segmentation strategies. Let's focus on these event attendees. Our goal is to move them from, coming to the event to giving a second gift. And now that they've given a second gift, or maybe their first gift, truly, then how do we engage them and steward them through the journey?
Yeah. And I think if you do that, you'll see that that's why the rates are being pulled down. They're getting pulled down by peer-to-peer and memorial. They're getting pulled down by events, maybe, online giving day type things. The trick is move those people into the group that you probably have like a 60 to 80% retention rate with, which is, people really connected to your mission. They give directly online, direct mail. Maybe they also volunteer. How can you transition those people in? Or don't worry about it. I think, and I'm kind of the retention guy, but there are people that maybe you should just bless and release and not worry too much about, right? Because it probably didn't cost you very much to acquire that gift anyway. So great, bank the money and then not agonize and spend a ton of money trying to get some guy, across the country or someone who doesn't really know anything about your mission to give again, when there are people that probably deserve some attention. So that's a lot of how you carve out that time for stewardship, is prioritizing. Okay, this is a peer-to-peer donor. He lives on the other side of the country and he was giving to, Julia's birthday fundraiser, versus here's a brand new donor that gave to us online. They live down the street. Let's figure out what's going on there. So just some sort of prioritization and the segmentation, of course. Yeah.
That's great.
Stephen, it's amazing. Our time is up and we
always,
I know it goes by so fast, but you have been such a champion of our sector. You've been a champion of Jarrett and I want to witness to all of our viewers that literally Stephen Shattuck was the one who was like, you gals ought to sell sponsorships. You got something going.
Look at those logos now.
I know. You've created a monster. But, really, the things that you do in our sector, it is amazing. The Bloomerang website is phenomenal. You bring a lot of thought leaders onto a big portion of the website that then share their knowledge. And it's just so amazing what your organization is doing and how you are leading our sector. So we are incredibly, incredibly grateful, and not a day goes by where we don't know that.
Thanks. Well, right back at you. You guys got great guests. I mean, you're doing a service as well. So
thanks. It's been a lot of fun. It continues to be a lot of fun. I'm Julia Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. And of course, I've been joined by the intrepid Jarrett Ransom, the nonprofit nerd herself. We spoke about this briefly last week. We had Jeb Banner, the CEO of Boardable, on. They just released on our show their third annual nonprofit engagement board engagement survey. Fascinating information. And so this might be a wonderful dovetail to what Stephen's been talking about today.
Oh, yeah.
Again, it's the leadership of the board.
Yep. It all starts there. Absolutely.
It all flows down. So check them out, boardable.com. And it's just riveting. And again, we are very grateful once again to Stephen, because, Stephen, I don't know if you know this, but you recommended Jeb Banner to Jarrett and I.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Back in like March 97, right. March 97. So no, but really, amazing. Again,
he's a good egg.
Oh, he's wonderful. He's wonderful. We want to thank our presenting sponsors. Without you, we would not be here. And again, we want to be very, very mindful of our two new sponsors that came on this week, Fundraising Academy, Cause Selling Education, and Nonprofit HR. So welcome to the family. We're very, very excited. Hey, again, what a great way to start the week.
Oh my God, I'm so jazzed. Is that even like a 21st century?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, it's been amazing. Again, Stephen, you always are welcome. We love what you have to say. And I cannot think of a better way to kind of bring us back to what are those things that we need to be looking at. We look forward to the FEP report. And, you know, it is a new day. It's a new week. It's always time to start something fresh or reshift your perspective on what you should be doing. So thank you for bringing that to us. Hey,
anytime.
It's been great. We want to end our show as we do every day with our mantra, stay well so you can do well. We'll see you back here tomorrow, everybody. Thanks, Stephen. Thank you.